Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about ethos, which is one of the three classical appeals of Aristotelian rhetoric. So ethos is part of the rhetorical triangle of ethos, pathos, and logos. I will be doing videos on pathos, logos, and the rhetorical triangle as a whole, but this video focuses on ethos. So I wanted to start with the man himself, with Aristotle, and what he says in the Rhetoric. So in first setting up the rhetorical triangle and then going into talking about ethos specifically, he says, of the modes of persuasion furnished by the spoken word, there are three kinds. The first kind depends on the personal character of the speaker, so that's ethos. The second on putting the audience into a certain frame of mind, that's pathos. The third on the proof or apparent proof provided by the words of the speech itself, so that's logos. Then, going on to talk about ethos specifically, he says, persuasion is achieved by the speaker's personal character when the speech is so spoken as to make us think him credible. We believe good men more fully and more readily than others. This is true generally whatever the question is, and absolutely true where exact certainty is impossible and opinions are divided. This kind of persuasion, like the others, should be achieved by what the speaker says, not by what people think of this character before he begins to speak. It is not true, as some writers assume in their treatises on rhetoric, that the personal goodness revealed by the speaker contributes nothing to his power of persuasion. On the contrary, his character may almost be called the most effective means of persuasion he possesses. So, what does this all mean? Well, basically, ethos is about the credibility, the reliability, the trustworthiness, the authority, the goodness of the speaker or writer, of the rhetor. Do we believe this person? Do we believe that they're telling the truth? Do we believe that they have our best interests at heart? Do we believe that they know what they're talking about? Do we believe that they are good? Ethos is, in this sense, connected to the idea of ethics. What are the ethics of this person? Are they ethically good or not? And Aristotle does seem to believe. Well, so here this is a little bit tricky. Aristotle does seem to believe that good people will make good arguments. Morally good people will make persuasive arguments. But that may not be quite accurate. It may be closer to the truth to say that he believes that people perceived as good will make more credible arguments because they are perceived as good, because we believe the things that they say. And it is sort of interesting and important to note this difference here. We believe good men more fully and more readily than others. So that sort of opens the door to the idea that the way that someone presents themselves rhetorically will align with their personal goodness or lack thereof. But he goes on to say that this is true generally whatever the question is, and absolutely true when exact certainty is impossible and opinions are divided. So if we take a policy question, what Aristotle would call political rhetoric, what should be done, we are, according to Aristotle, more likely to believe someone who is ethically good about what should be done rather than someone who is ethically questionable or bad. We're more likely to believe the person who seems knowledgeable, who seems to have our best interest at heart, who seems whatever it is, whatever positive values we as listeners are looking for. So particularly for questions like that, political questions, or questions, again, where there is no clear, definite answer, ethos plays a really, really important role. And of course, rhetoric, for Aristotle especially, is largely about persuading people within the Athenian political system. That is ultimately sort of the function of it as rhetoric develops from late 6th century BCE Athens down through the time of Aristotle at the very least. And so that's really important. Ethos is incredibly persuasive because if we do not believe, if we do not trust, if we're unwilling to listen to the speaker, the writer, whoever it is, then nothing else in the argument, no amount of evidence, no amount of appeals to our values or evoking emotions or anything like that is going to have any effect. The speaker ultimately needs to be trustworthy. Now, what Aristotle says, the part that has definitely been challenged by later rhetoricians is this kind of persuasion, like the others, should be achieved by what the speaker says, not by what people think of this character before he begins to speak. And that's not entirely untrue. What we call constructed ethos is really, really, really important. But there is another category of ethos, which is called situated ethos. Constructed ethos is what Aristotle is talking about, where you build credibility, you demonstrate your goodwill, you demonstrate your intelligence, whatever it is, within the act of rhetoric itself. But then there's situated ethos, which is the credentials, qualifications, reputation that someone comes into a particular rhetorical act with. So I'll give you an example of this. My own personal experience. I teach university. When I go into the classroom, I have a certain amount of situated ethos, right? The university has hired me and put me in this classroom. They therefore have validated my ability to do this job, my expertise in this area. I have a doctorate. That establishes my credentials as someone trustworthy to teach English. Students don't generally know this, but I have a number of publications, books, articles, reviews. I have peer-reviewed articles for scholarly journals, all of which sort of validates my scholarly abilities. So I have that background. I have those reasons for people within a university classroom to trust my word about composition, rhetoric, literature, drama, etc., etc. These are areas that I am qualified to teach on. And so from even before the class starts, by virtue of my position as someone hired by the university and qualified to do this, I have that situated ethos. Again, that's what situated ethos is. It is the set of credentials, the reasons to trust somebody prior to the actual beginning of their speaking, their writing, whatever it is. On the other hand, you have constructed ethos. And this is the thing Aristotle swears by, right? Constructed ethos, again, is built within the rhetorical act itself. So I have my situated ethos, but once I get into the classroom and I start teaching, I have to be knowledgeable about the subject matter. I have to convey that I actually care if students learn it. I have to persuade students that this is good for them to know. It matters if you can write effectively, if you can use rhetoric effectively. That demonstrates my knowledge, my capability, but also my goodwill. I have to show that I care about students. I have to show that I care about their education, and I have to show a thorough command of the material. All of those things build my trustworthiness, build my credibility. Students are more likely to listen to me and to believe what I say if I have persuaded them through constructing my ethos that I actually am somebody reliable and trustworthy who knows what he's talking about. And so these are the two sort of big branches of ethos, constructed ethos and situated ethos. And they both need to be present in order to build a trusting relationship with the audience, right? You need at least some situated ethos in order to just get people to listen to you initially. But then you need to construct ethos within your argument so that people will be persuaded to continue listening, to continue trusting, and to accept your word as reliable. Because again, we are often very skeptical of sources, especially those of us who are more cynical. It's very, very common, for example, to say, oh, I don't trust the results of that study because they were funded by X, and X has a vested interest in a particular outcome. And sometimes that's absolutely genuine. That is not always the case, but sometimes that absolutely is genuine. There absolutely is bad data presented on behalf of people who have a financial stake in the data saying what they want said. That undermines situated ethos. However, it's also worth remembering that someone can have a study funded by a particular interest, but the study itself may still be genuine. And so it becomes much harder at that stage for the authors of that study, the researchers, whatever it is, to construct their ethos. But if they clarify their methodology, if they clarify the sample set or whatever it is, if they clarify how their logic brought them to the conclusion that they arrive at, they can still construct their ethos in such a way that they overcome that distrust of their situated ethos. It's also worth noting that there are times in which situated ethos becomes problematic. There are times in which ethos is used as an alternative to logos. Less often to pathos. Often ethos and pathos can be combined at the expense of logos. Cults are a classic example of this. Flat Earth, young Earth creationism, election denialism here in the US, the theory that vaccines cause autism, etc., etc. All of these things are scientifically disproven. Election denialism isn't necessarily scientifically disproven, but it's been investigated over and over and over again. All of the claims supporting it have been debunked. It is untrue. And yet, through a combination of the ethos of those pushing these theories and pathos, they actually undermine logos. They destroy the element of the argument in which evidence itself and the argumentation, the logic of the connections between pieces of evidence, plays a central role. And so ethos can be turned to the dark side, and we want to be cautious about that. So yeah, this is the thing. This is ethos. This is one of, again, the central elements of Aristotelian rhetoric that carries through even to today. It is still central to how we understand, think about, and teach rhetoric. It is about credibility, reliability, trustworthiness, and the goodwill of the speaker or writer.